Hey guys, for your watercolor pencil practice, we are going to use basic shapes that we're using on our project. So you're going to start with a Sharpie and you are going to draw out your shapes to practice on. So I'm going to do a square and you can just guesstimate the perspective. It doesn't have to be perfect here. So I've got my three shapes and I've drawn them in perspective so that I can practice on the top of the shapes and the sides. When we start with watercolor pencil on our project, we're going to start with all of the tops of the shapes and then do the sides and then do the background. So I want you to practice the same way on your practice shape, except for you don't have to do the background on your practice. So the first technique that we're going to do is just a solid color. Okay, and then we're going to do blending. And then we're going to do mixing. Okay, so on the solid color, I'm going to start out by taking my pencil and running around the outside edge, kind of a medium dark. And you can rotate your paper while you're working so that you can easily color this in. Now, neatness does count. If you scribble, it's going to mess up your project. So color neatly to the edges and make sure it's even. Okay, and then I'm going to fill in the middle just a little bit lighter, but I'm going to fill in the middle solid. Like that. Okay, then I'm going to take my watercolor pencil or my watercolor brush, and for the most part you want to use the bigger watercolor brush, not the smaller one. Okay, unless you have a really small shape, you're going to use the bigger one. And I'm going to get my get water on my brush, and I'm going to use kind of a circular motion with the brush and the water, and I'm going to go back and forth across my shape, and I'm going to activate the paint. Okay, and the idea here is I'm using this motion to pull the paint off the paper and mix it with the water. I don't want it to look like I colored this with a pencil. I want it to look like this is mostly paint. Okay, now if you run out of water when you're doing this, you can get more water, but you have to go back and add the water to a dry spot. You cannot add the water to a place that's already wet. Okay, so now, if I have any areas that I've gone outside the lines, I can take a paper towel and dry my paintbrush, and I can go back to that area and I can try to lift some of that paint off the paper and kind of lighten it up. And then that way when I go back later and do the background, hopefully that'll cover. So now I'm going to leave this alone and let it dry. If I had any areas where there were puddles, I could take that dry paintbrush and kind of pick those up so that it dries evenly. Okay, if you leave puddles on your paper, those aren't going to dry evenly. All right, so now I'm going to let this dry. I can't do the sides until the top is dry. So I'm going to move over here to blending two colors. So I'm going to take my orange and I'm going to start up here at the top, and I'm going to gradually fade out towards the middle. Okay, so just like that. I'm pressing harder at the top of the shape and then gradually fading out once I get to the middle of the shape. So now I'm going to take the pink and do the same thing. It's easier for me to blend when I pull the pencil towards me, so I'm just going to turn it upside down. And I'm going to slowly and neatly fill this in. Okay, so now that's all colored. So I'm going to get some water, and I'm going to start in the lighter of the two colors, not the darker one, but the lighter. And I'm going to blend using the same technique, swirling my pencil and pulling the color towards the middle. And once I get to the pink, that's going to start to blend, and it's going to change colors over to pink. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of go back the opposite way because my orange was taken over a little bit. Now I have a line here in the middle. I'm going to get rid of that by drying my paintbrush with a paper towel and just kind of swirling over that line with the dry paintbrush. Okay, and it's going to even it out. Now I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to leave it alone. If I have any extra water up at the top where I started, I can kind of take my dry paintbrush and blot that a little bit. So now I'm going to leave this alone. Excuse me. And it's going to smooth out as it dries. I can't do the sides until the top is dry, but I would use the same technique on the side just for more practice. Now color mixing, we can make more colors than what we actually have. So I've had lots of questions about how do I make tan, okay? So if you want something like tan, you can take yellow and brown and mix those together and get a tan color, but we don't have a tan colored pencil. So I'm gonna start with yellow, and I'm gonna lightly color over my space here. This is actually kind of a medium, not as light as I said. So I'm gonna neatly color this in, try not to leave gaps between my pencil lines. And then I'm gonna take my brown and I'm gonna go over the top of this with the brown. And color it in. And you also want to do this neatly too. If this is messy, it's going to show. I could even add in a third color, like I could take some orange if I wanted it to be a little bit of an orangey tan. Okay, I could add in a light layer of orange. So you can mix multiple colors together and kind of see what you get. Now I'm going to take my brush and swirl them together. And you can see I've got kind of an orangey brown, yellowish brown, okay? So you can make lots of things this way. Another question kids have had is how do I make gray? So to make gray, you're gonna start with a black watercolor pencil and you're just going to color very lightly on the paper with the black watercolor pencil. And then when you add water to it, it will be gray because light black is gray. So there you go. You're gonna practice all three of these techniques: solid, blending, mixing, and you're gonna do the tops, let the tops dry, and then you're going to paint all of the sides also, okay? When you're done with this, show it to me and I will either give you feedback and then let you know if you can move on to your project.